Is your magic meter running low? Well, we've got a cure for you. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and today on the show I have my good friend back, Aaron Wallace, the author of the Thinking Fan's Guide to Everything in the World. Hi, Aaron Wallace. How's it going?
Hey, Jeff. I'm great. Thanks for having me back. I woke up this morning genuinely and immediately, first thing on my mind, so excited to record this with you.
I woke up first thing in the morning as well, but that's because it's the first thing I'm doing today. It's very, very, very early here in the West Coast. But why don't you give the appropriate titles to your books so that people can actually check them out? I said The Thinking Fan's Guide to Everything, but it's The Thinking Fan's Guide to
Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom, Walt Disney World Epcot, and then Hocus Pocus in Focus, The Thinking Fan's Guide to Disney's Halloween Classic.
And I can honestly say they're all fantastic. So go check them out. And hey, last minute Christmas gifts, there we go. They can get them right on Amazon. If you got Prime, they'll get to you in time.
Yeah. Signed copies. The deadline to order through my website is the 18th, which I think is probably before this drops. But otherwise, yeah, available on Amazon through whatever their Prime shipping deadline is, which I understand is like basically the day before Christmas Eve now. What a world we live in.
Jeez Louise. Anyway, we're here to talk about something that we're basically in Mary Poppins mania these days. Of course, Mary Poppins Returns comes out the day that this episode drops. So we're going to have, this is not going to be a spoiler episode. We're not going to spoil anything about the new Mary Poppins. We're just simply going to have a conversation about Mary Poppins. So let's get to that right now.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Okay, Aaron, so when it comes to Mary Poppins, where do you lie in the fandom of Mary Poppins?
I mean, I'm probably a little bit of an extremist. I don't know. I have loved this movie my entire life. I can so distinctly remember seeing it for the first time, and still, all these years later, it feels like I'm sitting down for something special every time I go to watch it. It just has that place in my heart. It's sort of like a reverence. When I was a kid, I remember I won this Student of the Month thing one time, and every time someone would win, I mean, of the month, there were a lot of awards to go around. But each time someone won, you got to fill out this personality profile, and they would hang it on this big banner at the front of the school. And one of the things was favorite actor. And I think most people who won probably picked like Bruce Willis or Tom Hanks or whoever was big in the 90s. And I remember mine was David Tomlinson, who plays Mr. Banks in Mary Poppins. And no one else knew who he was. But
wow, your nerd level just went up so high. That's amazing. Oh, I love that story. So was your first time, I'm going to assume, at home on VHS? Or
at home on VHS, I remember I went to my aunt's house, and I think she had probably recorded it off of HBO, if I recall, on a VHS tape. And I remember browsing through her collection, and she told me a little bit about what Mary Poppins was. And I said, I want to watch that. And then that first time of Mary Poppins coming down out of the sky and the children watching her from the window, I mean, I was totally captivated and have been ever since.
And around what age were you at that point?
I would guess maybe around 5 years old or so.
Oh, okay. So making a serious impression on young Aaron Wallace. I sadly don't have that memory from childhood, and that's probably why I partially feel the way I do about Mary Poppins, where I don't dislike it by any means, but I do not have the nostalgia feels that a lot of people do with this movie, and it makes me sad because, like, I love being a fan of anything. Like, being a hardcore fan is so much fun. So when it comes to anything that, like, I don't get the way other people do, it's always sad to me. And that's kind of where I am with Mary Poppins.
It's an interesting perspective, I would imagine, because you love Disney in general so much, and Mary Poppins is widely considered to be, one of the sort of benchmarks of Disney's artistic output. So I imagine that being an interesting perspective, and probably one that a lot of people have, especially newcomers to the Disney fandom who didn't grow up with maybe many of the Disney movies at all.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, just to look back at a 1964 musical as a Disney fan in 2018 and say, oh, this is supposed to be it, you know?
Yeah, I probably saw it for the first time maybe 10 years ago or so, maybe closer to 15 at this point. It was a while ago, but I was definitely like, you know, an older teenager or adult. I was probably in my early 20s is my guess. And I definitely saw it because like, okay, this is like Walt's masterpiece. That's what people say. So I should know it at the very least. And I just didn't, I mean, it's a slow movie. Can we just say it's a slow movie?
Sure. Yes. It absolutely is. I think anytime you sit down to watch a 1960s movie and especially a live action musical, like you have to be in a certain mindset. Because it is all of those movies. They just weren't in a hurry.
No, they certainly were not. And here's the thing. I actually have given this movie multiple chances because I saw it and I was like, okay, I wasn't really into that. But once again, it's Walt's masterpiece. Maybe I wasn't in the mood. So then I watched it again. I was like, yeah, it's still not doing it for me. There's certainly moments that I love. Don't get me wrong. I want to make it clear. I do not dislike this movie. It's just not one that I will sit down and be like, it's a Mary Poppins kind of day. And then I saw it another time, so Saving Mr. Banks came out, which I absolutely love. And they were having an event at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood where the movie premiered with like Dick Sherman and a bunch of other people involved in the film. And I was like, listen, I'm going to go see this. And if this doesn't make me a Mary Poppins fan, I don't know what will. And I went and I was just like, yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it, sadly. But
you loved Saving Mr. Banks anyway, then.
Here's the thing. I love everything surrounding Mary Poppins.
Okay.
I love Saving Mr. Banks. I love the Broadway musical. I love Mary Poppins Returns. We'll get to all of this. But there's... I don't know... I don't know. What exactly is it that you think makes it such a classic that still succeeds today? Because obviously, I mean, it's an old movie, but obviously people still fall in love with it. But I kind of feel like to fall in love with it, you need to be a certain age for the most part. I'm sure there are adults who watch it who think it for the first time and think it's amazing. But I think you need to be a certain age to fall in love with it. Do you feel that way?
Well, I'm sure it helps. I mean, and it's impossible to know, how would I feel about Mary Poppins had I not grown up with it. But I've given this some thought over the last couple of weeks because I have been on the Mary Poppins hype train in the build up to Mary Poppins Returns, let me tell you. But I've been thinking about, what is it that makes it this enduringly appealing classic? And I think sort of going beyond the songs and the performances, all of which are wonderful, to me, the appeal really boils down to two things, if I can get into it just kind of quickly.
Yes, please.
Okay, the first, I think, is just the mystery of it all. We don't really think of Mary Poppins as like a mystery film, but I think that actually mystery is one of its prevailing moods, maybe the prevailing mood. Who is this woman who lives up in the sky? Where does she come from? What's her deal? What is her history with Bert? Clearly she's been here before. Is she only interested in Cherry Tree Lane? Is her purview global? There are these moments when Bert will look into the camera and kind of whisper and everything gets quiet. He does this at the beginning when he says, I feel what's to happen's all happened before. There's another moment when he looks up through the chimney in the Banks household, and just all these quiet moments of mystery I find to be so fascinating. And just because magic is itself mysterious, I think by making the movie sort of so interested in the feeling of mystery, it kind of taps into the heart of supernaturalism. And then the second appeal, the second big reason for Mary Poppins appeal, I think, also deals with the supernatural. And that is just this innate desire that all of us have for someone to come save us. I don't want to like proselytize at all, but I've always sort of like understood God's relationship to all of us by way of Mary Poppins, if that makes sense, because she's this supernatural being who lives up in the heavens, right? And the children write out their wish lists, sort of like a prayer for what they want in their life, because they're kind of neglected by their parents, and so she comes down from the heavens, and she's loving, but she's very kind of tough. She's a tough person to deal with and to understand, and she has this master plan, right? But it unfolds in a very confusing, mysterious way, and so often the characters are kind of resisting her and sort of arguing with her. But ultimately, her plan works out not only for the bank children, but for the good of everyone. And so I just think there's something about that kind of relationship with the supernatural being that speaks to an innate longing that all of us have. And anytime there's this sort of protector character in a movie, I always just respond to that and always have. It's why I love Peach Dragon, because of the character of Nora. So anyway, to me, it's just a very powerful combination of, I guess, mystery, magic, and salvation.
That's very, very interesting. Now, do you happen to know whether or not the author P.L. Travers, like the whole, religion connection that you just spoke of, do you have any idea if that was purposeful?
I would say it's not. Okay. No, because P.L. Travers, she was very into sort of New Age thinking and a lot of like mysticism, and sort of throughout her life was spiritually all over the map. And I don't believe she was a Christian for any significant portion of her life. So I don't think she was purposely tapping into like a Jesus narrative by any means. P.L. Travers, by the way, quite an interesting subject all its own, and her relationship to this movie.
Yeah, and of course we get a little glimpse of that in Saving Mr. Banks, but it is, it's that nightmare. What was it? It took Walt a decade to get her permission to make the film?
I think 20 years he was petitioning her. And what's interesting is, Disney's Mary Poppins is not the first Mary Poppins movie. There was a Mary Poppins TV movie, made-for-TV movie in the 1940s that P.L. Travers, very similar deal. They had to really beg her for the rights. She always said, I hate television, I'll never let you do it. Then she did let them do it. She approved the movie, and then after it came out, she said she hated it. It's kind of a pattern with P.L. Travers with everything in her life. She just hated everything. That's just kind of her personality.
That's why she was an author. She's like full control at that point, right?
Yeah. But the person who played Mary Poppins in that 40s movie, interesting little Disney connection here, was Mary Wicks, who some people may know as Sister Mary Lazarus in the Sister Act movies, the older cranky nun. And she's also the voice of the female gargoyle in The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, wow. She played Mary Poppins?
The first Mary Poppins on screen.
Dude, that should have been your trivia question. That's a fantastic little tidbit I did not know.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
And the other thing you talked about was I find it interesting, the mystery you were talking about. And you're right, there are tons of questions about Mary Poppins that, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd probably know better than me, they're never answered. Certainly not in the film, but like even in the books. Like we have no idea why this woman flies or where she comes from. It's just suspension of disbelief, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the fact that it's not answered is what makes it so enduringly powerful. Like we have lived with these questions for how many years? 40, 50, 60 years since the movie came out. Well, that's powerful.
I think a prequel that answers these questions is... No, I'm kidding.
Bob Iger's ears just perked up.
It's like, oh, the money that this one's going to make. Prequel. There we go. Of course, one of the things about Walt Disney's Mary Poppins that is so wonderful and probably my favorite thing about it is the Sherman Brothers music. Fantastic music in this film. And I'm curious if you have a favorite song.
Oh, gosh, it's so hard because there is not a skipped track on this soundtrack for me. I think all the songs are wonderful. No, yeah, I love them all. Some are more sing-alongable than others, I guess. But I don't know. Do you have a favorite song?
It's Feed the Birds, which is super cliche. So something very interesting about me is when I was, if I had seen this movie as a kid, Feed the Birds probably would have been a scene I fast forwarded because I can remember as a kid, like watching The Wizard of Oz and being like, can we get past Over the Rainbow? Or watching Little Mermaid and being like, can we get past Part of Your World? Like, I just wanted the fun, up-tempo stuff.
Sure.
And now as an adult, I'm the complete opposite. Like, you could cut Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid, and as long as Part of Your World's in there, I'd be like, we're good. It's fine. I love ballads. They're my favorite. And of course, knowing the connection to Walt with Feed the Birds also makes it appealing to me. So Feed the Birds is just an absolutely beautiful song with some phenomenal orchestrations I remember they used that da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da, where like the orchestra swells for the trailer for the Sherman Brothers documentary, The Boys. And it was just so like powerful and effective in that trailer, like separate from, I don't know, there's something about that orchestral piece that really gets my skin crawling. Like, not skin crawling, it gives me goosebumps.
For sure. And not even just the instrumentation, but the choral accompaniment that comes in there when she's singing about all around the cathedral, the saints and the apostles look down as she sells her wares. And so as she's talking about these saints and apostles up in the heavens, like not only does the orchestra swell, but then all this chorus comes in and it's just overwhelming musically in that moment. The Sherman Brothers, I mean, I know we give them a lot of credit, but I feel like they don't get enough credit in the mainstream for, I mean, that's an incredible composition. It's probably my favorite too. It's hard not to choose that as your favorite.
Yeah, as a kid, I probably would have picked like Actually, it's a very close second for me. I think "Let's Go Fly a Kite" is one of like the most joyful songs ever written.
Yeah, I cry every time.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Wait, so you seem surprised that there are tracks that I don't skip. So what do you skip?
Like, I Love to Laugh. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's just it's a scene in the movie that to me I was like, okay, we want to save some time, cut this scene. Not necessary. It's so like, I guess because of its relationship to the movie in my mind, not a terrible song. It's just whenever I see it in the film, I'm like, okay, we can get rid of this. So I kind of feel that way about the song.
Yeah, there are a few sequences in this movie that I often hear people say we could lose. That's probably the most commonly cited scene that people really aren't on board with. I find it so funny, but I will say the payoff is there at the end when Mr. Banks is being dismissed from the bank. And then he tells the joke that we first hear in that scene about the wooden leg named Smith, which then leads the Richard Dawes Sr. character to ultimately pass away. And then there's that payoff in the moment of Let's Fly a Kite when you find out that Mr. Banks is actually going to take his place at the bank. And then it's like, oh, Mary Poppins' plan all came full circle. So that's one thing I always say in defense of the movie. Given that it is episodic and people often criticize it for being episodic.
That's my least favorite thing about it.
Yeah, it is unquestionably episodic. Same thing with Alice in Wonderland. I mean, I think it's episodic by design, but still that can be a hard thing to tap into as a viewer. But I will say each of these episodes, to an even greater extent than Alice in Wonderland, I think, they're always in service of a higher narrative. And this is something that Disney brought to the Mary Poppins story. You don't really get this in the book, but it's really all about Mr. Banks. They make this point in the movie, Saving Mr. Banks. He's really the main character, not Mary Poppins or the children. And so all of these episodes are ultimately in service of this higher narrative of Mary Poppins coming in and stitching this family together, sort of, transforming the father and then in turn transforming the children's lives.
Yeah, it's it's obviously such an insane classic. It's never going to go away. It's often described as Walt's masterpiece. And I'm curious, do you think, if you really had to think about like everything Walt did cinematically, do you think it's Walt's masterpiece?
Gosh, I don't know how you take someone like Walt Disney. Just the other day, someone on Twitter called him the most important person to live during the 20th century. Whether he is or is not that, I don't know, but he's in the running, right? And to have someone who's in the running because of their artistic output, I don't know how you look at any one thing that they did and say that it's the masterpiece of their career, particularly if Disneyland could be called his masterpiece. Sure. But even just looking at cinema, how do you compare Mary Poppins to Fantasia, to Snow White? I don't know. Certainly as a live action film, it's probably his masterpiece. I don't know what else would be in the running there.
Shaggy Dog. No, I'm just...
I will say this, just that to me, Mary Poppins is sort of what Fantasmic was for Disney theme park shows, the original Fantasmic, and that
original. Let's put that note there. The original Fantasmic.
By the way, I 100% co-sign the Disney coast-to-coast dismantling of the new Fantasmic at Disneyland.
Which, I feel actually a little bad about this. You know, that people always say, I'd rather you enjoy something than agree with me. And I feel like you actually enjoyed Fantasmic 2.0 until you listened to that episode. And was like, I remember getting a text from you, like, I didn't hate it until I heard your episode, and you're right. But so I feel a little bad that I've tainted it a bit for you.
Well, I didn't love it either. I came away just sort of very like, I need to process this, and then you really helped to distill why I didn't love it, which in turn led me to hate it. Yeah, so that's kind of true. But anyway,
I've seen it 3 times since it's opened. Only 3. I used to go every time I went to Disneyland. If Fantasmic was showing, I was there. I loved Fantasmic, and I went once by choice and twice because I was dragged, and It breaks my heart that Fantasmic basically is gone in my mind. It's so sad.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's hard to revisit heartbreak, right? And that's what it is when you go back.
Anyway.
But the original Fantasmic was this culmination of everything that the Disney parks does right, from pyrotechnics to, characters performing on a stage, and just everything. And so I think Mary Poppins is that, everything that Walt Disney Productions or his pictures did, from the music, as we said, to animation, to live action, to special effects, to capturing this feeling of magic like you've never seen it on screen before. It was just sort of all came together in this like spectacle.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I honestly, if I had to pick one film that I was like, oh, this changed everything, I think Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is like the quote unquote masterpiece. For me, anyway. I still, I've went back to that film, it's been a while now, but when I was doing a Princess Pondering of it, I watched it, and I kind of was blown away. The thing that I think shocked me the most about it was how, difficult they made it on themselves. With the amount of water in that film blows my mind. The animation of water is probably one of the most difficult things to animate. And I'm like, wow, they just made this difficult. And of course, it was the first feature length. And so, I don't know, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I think I would, if I had to pick one film that was his masterpiece, I'd probably say that. But you're right, for live action, in fact, I heard somebody call Mary Poppins an animated film recently, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Who would ever think that? What is maybe 5% of the film animated?
I agree that it's kind of ridiculous to think that. However, in the United Kingdom, at least this used to be the case. I don't know if it still is. And in a number of other countries, I believe. So you know how here in the United States, we have the Disney animated classics canon, right? And we're up to 50, however many films in that canon. Over in other countries, Mary Poppins is included in that canon officially, as are Pete's Dragon, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and several of these other movies that have animated sequences.
I mean, that had to be simply to sell more. They had to be like, these animated classics are selling really well. Let's throw these. Sure, it has an animation sequence. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is an animated movie, apparently, because their whole opening credits is animated. Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. In fact, if let's just call a spade, the new Lion King is an animated movie, and they're calling that live action. I mean, how much more opposite could you go?
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. We almost need a third category now, photorealistic film. It's just something other than live action or animated.
It's not live action. It's not live action. Like, that movie Dinosaur that they made is more live action than right? Because, so Dinosaur, what was that, the year 2000, I think?
Yeah.
They shot real scenic elements in the wilderness and then digitally added in dinosaurs. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Lion King not entirely created in a computer? This new one that comes out in 2019?
It's been my assumption that they were using motion capture performances from the cast. I could be wrong about that.
Okay, but does that make it a live action movie? I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but I don't think motion capture, if that's the case, then the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol is a live action movie. And I would never call that a live action movie.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if it makes it a live action movie. I do think it makes it something different than an animated movie.
Sure. I don't know. It's just so weird to me when the live action reboot of The Lion King. I'm like, what world are you living in that this is live action?
Well, you look at the trailer and those definitely aren't the first words that come to mind. Live action, like not at all.
Oh, no. But God, it's beautiful. And I'm looking very forward to it. So don't get me wrong. It's
same.
It looks great. But okay, so Julie Andrews, obviously, this was a huge success for her. She had some success on Broadway before Mary Poppins, right?
Yes.
She was in, why am I blanking? What's the
My Fair Lady.
Yes.
And also Camelot.
Mm-hmm. And she was turned away for the role in My Fair Lady for the film.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating. I mean, the reason she was available to make Mary Poppins, she didn't want to do it at first. She wanted to be in My Fair Lady. And Warner said, no, you're not a big enough star, because she was just a Broadway person at the time.
Yeah.
They said, you're not a big enough star to carry a major motion picture. So they cast Audrey Hepburn, who doesn't sing. And so, they had to dub her voiceover, and it seems like such a shame. But anyway, it freed Mary Poppins, or Julie Andrews, up to make Mary Poppins. And then both those movies came out in 1964. They were up against each other at the Oscars. You probably know all this already, but for those who don't, My Fair Lady ended up beating Mary Poppins for Best Picture that year. But Julie Andrews beat Audrey Hepburn for Best Actress, and then thanked, I think it was Jack Warner, in her Oscar acceptance speech for not giving her the role of My Fair Lady, which is a pretty baller thing to do.
That may be my favorite thing that Julie Andrews has ever done. Like, that's such a fun little jab. I love that. Have I ever told you my Julie Andrews story? I'm sure I have. Have I ever told you this?
I don't know. I mean, I've heard you throw a lot of shade at Julie Andrews'
I have no shade to throw at Julie Andrews.
I have heard some shade over the years of knowing you.
Here's the thing. Well, okay, give me an example of the shade I've thrown at Julie Andrews.
I don't know. I can't think of an example. I feel like just anytime her name comes up, there's a lot of coming from you.
I don't think that's true. I just don't feel the same way you do about her.
Yeah, that's fair.
I genuinely don't think I've thrown shade at her.
Okay, well, just tell us how you feel about Julie Andrews, Jeff.
I think she's great, but there's just no, she hasn't like done a role for me that I'm like, oh my God, like, I haven't she seems like a lovely person. I watched Julie's Green Room on Netflix, if that means anything to you.
I think that's great.
But there just hasn't been a role that, like, honestly, when you say Julie Andrews, I probably think Mary Poppins, but as you know, like, I'm not the biggest Mary Poppins fan. So
right.
I'm not a fan in the sense of her work has blown my mind. I think she's incredibly talented and all that stuff that she is, but she just, like, there just isn't the role that I love. So.
Yeah, so not The Sound of Music either?
Never seen it.
Oh.
You don't know my Sound of Music story?
Do I? I don't know. Tell me it.
Okay, so actually, they kind of tie together. So let's start with the Sound of Music story. So obviously, my parents did a terrible job raising me when it comes to like some classic films because I missed out on Sound of Music. I missed out on Mary Poppins. They just weren't into the movie musicals, I guess, other than West Side Story and The Music Man. Like those, I got plenty of, and so I just never saw The Sound of Music as a kid. And then the Rosie O'Donnell show comes along, and I love Rosie, and I rush home from school every day to watch the Rosie O'Donnell show. And she has mentioned more than once her favorite movie as a kid was The Sound of Music. Like, it's one of her absolute favorite films. And anytime she had a guest on the show that had never seen The Sound of Music, she would say, "Oh, what?" She's like, "You are coming over tonight. We're watching The Sound of Music." Oh. So I held out because I wanted to be invited over to Rosie's house to watch The Sound of Music. And that's why I've never seen The Sound of Music.
I love that story so much. I feel like every time I come on this show, we end up talking about Rosie O'Donnell. It's because we both love her so much. But that really is such a testimony to the importance of her show, right? That she...
Greatest talk show of all time. Her and Oprah, like, greatest talk shows of all time. I mean, Oprah was a different level, but if you're just going to talk about, like, frivolous, fun talk shows, Rosie O'Donnell show, absolutely hands down.
Well, I really want you to see The Sound of Music, so I guess I need to campaign for Rosie O'Donnell to invite you over.
Please tweet her this episode at this exact clip moment, and I would love that. But here's the even funnier thing. So I'd never seen the film, still haven't, but I went to see it on stage. There's a tour with Ashley Brown.
Ashley Brown, I saw that tour too.
Yeah, so that was in LA, and I was like, I'm gonna go see it, and I had great seats and everything, and I'm sitting there, and I'm with somebody who, of course, is a huge fan of the movie, and, like, there are moments that happen, and I was like, oh, look, the kids' clothes are made out of the curtains, and, like, my friend is laughing her butt off because apparently, like, these are super iconic moments that everybody knows except I don't. So, like, there were things surprising me, and then at the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, this took a dark turn. There are Nazis. Like, I was in shock, and so she just found it hilarious how naive I am about The Sound of Music. Of course, I knew the music of The Sound of Music, right? That's classic stuff, but never seen the movie. And so the Julie Andrews story is connected to that because I was driving down Hollywood Boulevard one day, and I'm stopped at, like, a light right in front of the Chinese theater. And to my right, so to my left side is the Chinese theater. To my right side, I see the gates up and, crowds there, which isn't that abnormal in LA. There was obviously some big event going on at the Chinese theater. And I'm stopped at the light, and all of a sudden this crowd goes wild. And I'm like, what is going on? And I look to my left, and who's, like, directly outside my car window but Julie Andrews. And I was like, oh, it was a big Sound of Music, like, not re-release, but an anniversary screening.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh, now I get the screams. Alrighty.
Were you personally excited, like, at all to see her outside your window? I was actually on the
phone with my sister. I was like, she's like, what's so loud? And I'm like, oh, there's Julie Andrews is right there. And that was basically my reaction.
You say you never throw shade her way.
I don't think that's shade. I think that's an honest. Do I have to, like, get giddy as a schoolgirl when I see her?
No. Just the lack of enthusiasm. Like, I saw Julie Andrews and I felt nothing.
Here's the thing. Okay, can I be a jerk for a second?
Yeah.
When
please.
you live in LA, like, you get over that stuff real quick. You see people all the time, and I'm the type, I nerd out over people nobody cares about. I don't know. It's I don't nerd out that easily when it comes to celebrities.
Yeah, I get that.
So, in any case, that's my Julie Andrews story and my Sound of Music story. How do you like that? How do you like that?
I like them both. I love that you have a story for both.
Yeah.
Despite not having seen one and not being an enormous fan of the other.
I promise you the next time I see Julie Andrews, I will just, like, scream and jump up and down and get really excited. And then I'll just stop and be like, this is on behalf of Aaron Wallace.
Please do. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excellent. So Julie Andrews obviously has a bit of a career beyond Mary Poppins when it comes to Disney, with some other films I've never seen before.
Okay.
Princess Diaries.
Yeah. It's what's cool about Julie Andrews. So after Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, she spent many, many years trying to divorce herself from the squeaky clean, family-friendly nanny image, right? She made a lot of adult-themed films. She did movies with nude scenes. Like, she was really trying hard to set herself apart. But then she reached a point in her career where she said, okay, I've established my credibility as a versatile actress. Now I'm going to embrace what will be my legacy. And so I think we've seen over the last 20 years her kind of come back into the Disney fold, which has been a wonderful thing. Because some celebrities don't do that, right? Like, they spend the rest of their lives fighting against that image of their younger selves. So I'm glad to see she's embraced it. The Princess Diaries for me is just okay as a film. I know that's heresy.
Well, listen, at least you've seen them, right? I've been told I really need to see them. Like, they're really, really good. And I was like, all right, like, maybe someday. I'm not against it. I'm certainly not against it, but yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize she tried to go against type for a while. That's I respect that. I like that, Julie Andrews. I'm gonna watch those movies first, and then I'll go back and watch Princess Diaries. So, do you have any favorite characters other than Mary Poppins in the film?
I feel like it would be such an obvious answer to say either Mr. Banks or Bert, though I love them both and every character in this movie. But I'm going to take a moment to highlight someone who's a minor character, but who gives me so much joy in this movie. And that's the character of Ellen, the housekeeper or the maid.
Oh, yes.
She's played by Hermione Baddeley, who was in quite a few Disney movies. But she's just so funny. There's that moment where no one knows where Mr. Banks is right after he's gotten fired. And she says, better drag the river. There's a spot there I hear is popular with jumpers.
No, she's great. Yeah. She's wonderful. You want to know something really funny? So this time of year, of course, a lot of us are watching holiday movies, and one that I don't watch every year, but I popped in this year, and I really love. It's my favorite Sandra Bullock movie, and I'm not particularly a fan of hers, but I love While You Were Sleeping. You ever seen this movie?
Yes.
Okay, so Mrs. Banks plays the grandmother in this movie,
That's right.
And it's so funny because I knew her first from While You Were Sleeping, and then I see Mary Poppins. I'm like, she has such a distinct voice.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, that's the woman from While You Were Sleeping, is what I thought watching Mary Poppins.
That's great. So is she your favorite character outside of Mary?
No, honestly, mine's even more random than yours. It's the
Okay.
penguins. I love the penguins. I just think they bring me joy watching those penguins dance around, and I think they're hilarious. Yeah. They're just fun. I mean, there's nothing significant about them other than they make me laugh and smile.
So there's a movie that was in theaters for one day only this month called Buttons the Musical. It's a live action.
You had told me about this. Why did I not look into it? I meant to.
Jeff, the only thing you missed was maybe the worst movie ever made.
Oh, okay.
Truly horrible. However, it's notable for a few reasons. Live action fairy tale musical in theaters starring a whole bunch of people, including Angela Lansbury and Dick Van Dyke. So first of all, how awesome is it that they in their 90s are on screen together in 2 new musicals in theaters this month?
It's incredible.
And Angela Lansbury also is in The Grinch. She's a voice in the
That's
new animated
right.
Grinch. So she has 3 movies in theaters this month at the age of 92, 93. Incredible.
How old is Julie Andrews?
I don't know.
80s, right?
She's got to be. She doesn't look it, but she's got to be.
Yeah, she looks great.
Yeah. But anyway, there is a really cool homage in that Buttons movie. If you didn't see it, you missed your chance. Who knows if it'll ever come back? It was in theaters literally once at 12:55 p.m. on one day.
Well, it's interesting because I remember when I was in Orlando, you mentioned the film, and you were like, I don't know, like, it's got Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. I don't know why they're not marketing this better. We now know why. It's terrible.
Yeah. I think someone realized, like, oh, this movie's pretty embarrassing. Let's just kill it. But there is a moment where Dick Van Dyke dances with a penguin in obvious homage to Mary Poppins.
Aww.
So that's very cool. Also, fun fact about those penguins. This was going to be one of my backup trivia questions, but I don't think I'll need it, so I'll throw it in now. Those penguins, 2 of them are voiced by very notable people. One, what do you know? This is like a bonus trivia question.
I don't. I thought you were going to go with the fact of, I know one of them was kind of like, not designed after, but when they were animating them, like, one of them is very Dick Sherman-esque in his way of, like, just the way he's so playful and stuff. I know one of the animators was like, he reminds me of Dick Sherman. I've heard that before. But,
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I think it's mentioned in The Boys, or I don't know if it was specific or if it was like one of those things that afterward they were just like, you know, he's kind of like the Dick Sherman of the Penguins, just because he's such a playful man. But who are the voices? I have no idea.
So 2 of the penguins, one of them is voiced by David Tomlinson, who plays Mr. Banks.
Oh, okay.
And another is voiced by Peter Ellenshaw, who is the artist who painted all of those beautiful matte paintings in the backgrounds of Mary Poppins.
Fun fact. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. Those are great paintings.
They are.
So beautiful. You know what's so interesting about this? Normally I would hate this in a movie, but there's something very charming and very classic Disney. And I mean this not in a disrespectful way at all, but like, it was clearly shot in a soundstage.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like those paintings in the background of on Cherry Tree Lane and everything. They're just like very obviously not real, but so stylistically beautiful. And like, I love the fact that it's being a kid who is interested in showbiz, like getting a behind the scenes look of anything was exciting to me. So like, just the fact that I could tell, like, this was shot on a stage. Nothing makes me happier than, like, a movie shot entirely on a backlot. I love that. I know Hitchcock was a huge fan of shooting on backlots, and these days the trend is to go on location, which I completely understand as well. But there's something a knowing that, like, the entire thing was fabricated that gets me very, very excited. And I kind of get that feeling in Mary Poppins. I'm like, this was clearly handmade, and bravo.
Yeah, 100%. Just the talent of building something entirely artificial and making it look so gorgeous and artful. I mean, it's the magic of old Hollywood.
Yeah, it's great. You had mentioned earlier, I just want to touch on something, but you had mentioned earlier as a kid, the first time you see Mary Poppins in the flight reveal, that is such a great moment. Anytime she flies, which I know it's a person on strings. I don't know why we as humans get so excited about this still, but it's gives you chills. At least for me, it does. And that reveal, and I remember all the teaser stuff we've seen of Mary Poppins Returns, just that image of her coming through the clouds, and it's such a great iconic moment, and I'm glad that lives on with the sequel. It's a great moment. But I do want to touch upon, if they were to, for years everybody's been like, where's the Mary Poppins attraction for the parks? And I'm curious if you could put one in. There is the story of, I guess, Tony Baxter, like, fully designed one, like had a whole concept, pitched it, never got made. Now I hear we're getting like a carousel or something to be put into Epcot in the UK. But if you could do any attraction of your own for Mary Poppins, what kind of thing would you do?
Gosh, there's so much potential. I mean, they could do a stage show. They could do a restaurant on the order of Be Our Guest in New Fantasyland and Magic Kingdom. They obviously, like you mentioned, the carousel, it sounds like we probably will get. But if I could choose anything, I would make a very elaborate e-ticket, state-of-the-art dark ride. Mm-hmm. I think the Mary Poppins scene in the Great Movie Ride, which has really been our only real taste of a Mary Poppins attraction, I think that really sort of whet an appetite in Disney fans for generations for a Mary Poppins dark ride. It kind of showed the potential of what that could be. So if you ever rode through the Great Movie Ride, and Jeff, I know that you did, that had to make you pine for more of that, right? So that's what I would want.
So I want a dark ride as well, but here's something. Goes against my general thinking about this kind of stuff. But in general, I don't like projection rides. But riddle me this: imagine if we had a dark ride where the only things that were like physical audio animatronics were Mary and Bert, and then we go into one of those animated worlds, and everything else is projection around those animatronics. I think that could be so cool, especially today where, like, my favorite thing about Pandora, the World of Avatar, is the use of projection in Navi River Journey. I think I think that attraction is the absolute best mix of projection and practical. And I think if they could do something like that with Mary Poppins, where most of it is like animated projection, and then we have some physical stuff that represent Mary and Bert, I think that would be phenomenal.
I really love that idea. I'd never thought about that before, but yeah, that would be a great way to take that part of the movie and translate it to a theme park attraction in a really cool way.
Yeah. Layers of projections and stuff. Like,
yes.
I think it would be very, very cool.
Yeah, they could even have like sort of like blank structures built, but then things projected on those. Yeah, that would be great.
Who knows? Maybe that's 2.5D. Maybe we'll find out, this summer with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I don't know.
Yeah, right back in the Great Movie Ride. One thing I would love is, narratively it wouldn't make sense because this scene comes kind of halfway into the movie, but if you could start the ride by boarding what looks like an ordinary carousel, so you're on the horse, but then as it turns halfway, the carousel detaches, like the horse detaches, and then you're riding that through an e-ticket. Sort of like the turntable apparatus they had in the original Journey into Imagination. If they could pull off something like that, how magical would that be?
I love that idea. That'd be great. And also, I want to talk about for a moment the Broadway musical. You've seen it, yes?
Yeah, so I saw it on the North American tour, which was probably close to 10 years ago. So it's definitely getting to that point where some of my memories are a little hazy of the show, but I remember loving it. You've seen it, I know, right?
I saw it on Broadway, and I actually went out of my way to see it on Broadway years after it had opened, but it was in LA. And I didn't see it, and I was told, I actually didn't see it because somebody told me, go see it on Broadway. Like, the set is really incredible. The way that it's built on the stage, they can't do on tour. They do cool stuff on tour with it, but it's really incredible on Broadway. So I went and saw it on Broadway. I gotta be honest, I like it more than the film. I loved it. I didn't know tons about it, so there were definitely moments that, like, when Bert literally dances around the proscenium of the theater, I was just like, what is happening? I had no idea that was a thing that happened in the show. So, like, literally, for those of you listening, if you look at the proscenium of a theater, there's the two sides, and then there's the top part. He's dancing upside down on the proscenium, and it's just like, Wow. All right. That's some Disney magic there. And then, of course, Mary's flight into the audience.
Yeah.
And the thing that I love about it is, once again, we are enthralled by humans hanging on strings. We just are. This is something that we always will be, I assume. And in the case of something like, Peter Pan, we clearly see the strings and we're okay with it. We suspend our disbelief. And I honestly think it's lovely that we, in this age of super techie stuff, we can still suspend our disbelief to love that. But in Mary Poppins, the wonderful thing about it is that it's done so slowly that it's done in a fashion between the lighting and the speed at which she flies that it's hidden. It's a very hidden, completely hidden. And I don't know how it was on tour, but on Broadway, you have no idea how she's flying into the audience. And I remember I was in the front of the mezzanine, right in the first balcony there, and she just came up right past us, and I was like, what am I seeing right now? And the orchestra swells, and you're just goosebumps all over. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's such a shame that show isn't in production anywhere anymore. It's not touring. It's not on Broadway. I know a lot of local schools and whatnot will put it on quite frequently now. But, I look at, and maybe this is blasphemous to say, but I don't love The Lion King or Aladdin on Broadway. But to see those,
you don't like The Lion King, really?
Well, I love the art of The Lion King, the way it's presented visually. But I just think the book is not that inspired. That's
interesting.
I know that's probably an unpopular opinion.
It's my first Broadway show ever, Lion King.
Mine too, but on tour.
No, that was my first Broadway show.
On actual Broadway.
Yeah.
But when it opened?
Yeah, opening year.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, that show blew my mind. And I absolutely agree, though. I think Mary Poppins should still be on Broadway over Aladdin. Aladdin is very mediocre in my mind.
Yeah.
And I wish, Mary Poppins, I think, was better and more unique on Broadway. So,
yeah, and also it has very broad appeal. People go crazy for everything, Mary Poppins. So I'm just surprised that show wasn't able to have longer legs.
Yeah, I do. One of the things about the musical that I absolutely love, first of all, the additional music. I'm always really impressed with how well it sounds like something the Sherman Brothers would have written. The Sherman Brothers did not write the new music for the Broadway musical, yet it sounds like Sherman songs. In fact, not knowing the movie extraordinarily well, when I heard that song, I'm practically perfect in every way, I was like, I don't remember this in the movie. I couldn't believe that wasn't part of the movie because it fits so perfectly.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then anything can happen. That's just, what an incredible song. Yeah,
really, really beautifully done with the music. And the other thing that I absolutely love about the stage musical more than the movie is in Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, she actually says it backwards. And it always bothered me in the movie when the way you say it backwards is, and she says it, I'm like, that is not how you say Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious backwards. It just isn't. And I can't do either of them, so don't ask me to. But I love the fact that in the Broadway musical, they actually say it backwards, and it's an ugly word, so I understand why they changed it, but I'm always just that's incredible. You just said it backwards. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, they found so many cool ways to play with the original songs like that, even spelling out Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, not only verbally, but with, their hands and their arms. Just very playful with the original songs, which I love.
Really well done. As I mentioned, I tend to like things connected to Mary Poppins more than the actual Mary Poppins, so the Broadway musical I love Saving Mr. Banks. How did you feel about that movie?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. I actually want to eventually do an episode of my podcast called Saving Mr. Banks because there was so much flack sent or directed toward this movie. Even from the Disney fan community, I just remember reading so much on social media about how it was disrespectful for the film to, imply that P.L. Travers liked the movie when she didn't, or that it was historically inaccurate, or that, the Disneyland scene wasn't 100% period accurate. And that all just seems so sort of unfair to me, all that criticism. I think that it really gets to the heart of what I understand that process to have been, and Walt and P.L. Travers' relationship to have been. And movies are translations or adaptations of real events, and so to me, it just really worked beautifully.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I must have been in my own bubble of like loving Saving Mr. Banks to the point that I don't even remember any hate or shade thrown toward it, because I just loved it so much. I didn't realize people disliked that movie.
There was a lot of it, though. I think in the general public, like outside of people who don't particularly care about, the nitty gritty of P.L. Travers and Walt Disney's relationship, I think most people probably loved it. And I did, and you did.
So, of course, now, if you're listening to this episode on the day of its release, it's also the day of the release of something more important, Mary Poppins Returns, which I have seen, and I absolutely love it. We're not going to get into spoilers here, but I am curious what your thoughts were when you first heard there was going to be a sequel to Mary Poppins.
Oh, 100% on board.
Yeah.
Just for so many reasons. I mean, just with sequels in general, like my perspective is always like, I welcome new stories to come to the table. And then if they end up being bad, you just kind of discard them. Yeah. Right? But I always want to see what they can do. And particularly with Mary Poppins, I mean, that movie ended with sort of a hint toward a sequel, right? I mean, Mary Poppins, or Bert looks up to Mary Poppins and says, "Don't stay away too long." And she looks down and kind of gives like this little winking nod. So you always got the sense that there was more there. Also, there are 7 more books in the original Mary Poppins book series. So it's not like a crazy idea that there would be a follow-up. And you just get the sense that maybe Mary Poppins' work in this family's life is not yet done. So, I mean, the second I heard that they were doing this, I was all on board.
Did you happen do you know if Walt was interested in making a sequel?
Yes. Yeah. So my understanding is that they wanted, even though Walt was not the biggest fan of sequels, they tried to do that very early on after Mary Poppins. But P.L. Travers had script approval in her contract, and she refused to give it.
Man, good thing she's dead. I'm sorry.
Well,
that's a terrible thing to say.
Oh, wow. Her estate still has script approval, by the way.
Yeah, but they seem to be reasonable.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, it's just not entirely true that P.L. Travers hated Mary Poppins and that's the end of the story, like hated the movie. Listen, if you ever study her life, I mean, she was defined by contradictions, and there are so many of them throughout her life. And as I said, she was just a very difficult personality. But she, as many critical things that she said about Mary Poppins after its release, she also said a whole lot of very complimentary things about the movie, and there were letters where she indicated that she loved it and was very proud of it. So she was all over the place. So I think people are a little silly to rush to her defense after Saving Mr. Banks. Also, I have to say, do you remember the whole thing when Saving Mr. Banks was released and Meryl Streep got up and gave her little speech about Walt Disney being a gender bigot?
Yeah.
Yeah. P.L. Travers, by the way, was an avowed anti-feminist. Even though she wrote one of the all-time great self-assured female characters, like this powerful woman in Mary Poppins, she also wrote numerous essays sort of dismantling the feminist movement. So, if anything, I feel like Walt Disney's movie was feminist compared to what P.L. Travers would have had it been. So if anything, Meryl Streep should be criticizing P.L. Travers, but I digress.
I love this conversation with you. If you ever do a Saving Mr. Banks episode and need somebody to come on, I will gladly chat with you all day about it.
Oh my gosh, we have to do that.
This type of stuff I nerd out about. I love it. But I am curious, when you heard Emily Blunt was being cast as Mary Poppins, what were your initial reactions to that?
Yeah, I mean, all for it. I mean, it's impossible to know right until you see her performance how it's going to go, and no one can be Julie Andrews. She doesn't need to be Julie Andrews as long as she just nails the role in her own. But I like Emily Blunt. I think she's a great actress. We got to see her in a musical in Into the Woods, and I thought she sounded really wonderful in that. So no reason to not want her in this role.
And what are you looking most forward to in the sequel?
Oh, what am I looking most forward to? Oh, Angela Lansbury.
Oh, okay. Now can I say something about that? I don't want to spoil anything for you. It's about like when she's in the movie. Can I say that, or is that going to be like ruining something for you?
I don't know. I kind of don't want to know.
Okay, then I won't say.
Is that okay? Okay.
But what I will say about Mary Poppins Returns is this, and I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I prefer this movie to the original. Emily Blunt is my Mary Poppins. And although the songs are not as good as the original, the musical score is phenomenal. The background score is chilling. Like several times throughout the movie, I just kept getting chills. And it was often attributed to that music. Even the moment of Mary coming through the clouds, like the music that accompanies that is just so beautiful from the very first second. From the second the movie starts and the overture begins, unbelievable musical score. I would probably say that's my favorite thing about the movie is the musical score, not the songs, but the musical score. Unbelievable.
That is honestly really exciting. And I have to say, there's been so much praise pouring out toward this movie so far, just in the early screenings for critics. And even with all of that having been said, the thing that has me most exciting is knowing that you saw the movie and loved it as much as you did. Like, that to me is a huge vote of confidence. So it has me really,
because since I'm not a diehard fan of the original, I don't know if it gives me a right to, like, I don't know if people should judge their love of it based on mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but somehow that makes it an even bigger stamp of approval. Like, if you aren't all that invested in Mary Poppins to begin with, and I know you said you love the things that surround Mary Poppins, but I mean, if it made that big of an impression on you despite not having loved the original, I don't know, to me that says a lot.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. So I'm excited for everybody to see it. As I said, I don't want to get into spoilers here because I know this is being dropped the day that the film is released as well. And this, of course, is the season 5 finale of Disney Coast to Coast, which Mr. Aaron Wallace was kind enough to join me for. But anything else you want to say about Mary Poppins before we get to some trivia?
Just like I said, just such a special film. And I love that the whole world right now is having this moment of kind of celebrating the movie. It's really nice. Yeah,
the screening I went to, it actually had the director and the producer, and I guess 2 producers were there. And, they all had wonderful things to say about the experience of making the film. And, it sounds like it was obviously hard work, but a wonderful time as well, which is always so nice to hear. So, anyway, let's get to some trivia. That means it's trivia time! Okay, Aaron, do you want to hit me with a trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
You hit me.
Okay, so over at the Walt Disney Studios lot in Burbank, California, there is a soundstage named after Julie Andrews. And I'm wondering, do you know which number stage it is, and which films of her are shot there?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't even know. I've never been there, other than driving by it on the road. Aaron, you've never been to the
Walt Disney Studios lot?
I've never been.
Aaron, okay.
Can you take me?
Yes, and here's the problem with when you visit. This is like me and Orlando. I go to Orlando, it's like, well, obviously I'm going to Walt Disney World. There's so much more to experience there, and I never do it because I'm like, well, I got a week, I'm going to Walt Disney World. And I'm sure it's the same when you come to SoCal. You're like, oh, I'm going to Disneyland. We need to get you beyond Disneyland and to the Walt Disney Studios lot. You need to go.
Yeah. No, I think LA probably has a lot more beyond Disneyland than Orlando has beyond Walt Disney World. But
you guys got Dinoland, which I'm dying to check out. Just saying.
I've never been there, actually.
It's like an hour and a half from you, I think.
Yeah. But no, I've been on Imagineering's campus. I've driven by the studios. I've just never been on the lot. So I don't even know how many sound stages are there. I can't imagine there are this many, but just because of the connection to Cherry Tree Lane, I'm going to guess number 17.
No, I think there are only like 6 or 7 stages. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a low number. It's around 6 or 7. It is stage number 2. And
okay.
What do you think was shot inside stage number 2 of hers?
Well, I'm going to guess the Princess Diaries.
Princess Diaries are shot there, and Mary Poppins.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, that makes sense. How cool that she got to come back to the original soundstage.
Yeah, I always think that's super, super cool. But there is one other stage on that lot named after a person, and do you know who that is by any chance? It's stage 1, and it's named after somebody.
Stage 1. Is it also an actor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will guess
it was pretty recently dedicated. You've probably read about it on the blogs and stuff.
Oh, recently dedicated?
Mm-hmm.
I'll still say Fred McMurray.
Nope, it's Annette Funicello.
Oh, wow.
Stage That's 1 cool. is where they shot the Mickey Mouse Club. So, it's crazy to even think about just walking around there. Like you just take it for granted and don't think about it. And now, as I was like looking up this trivia, it's like, gosh, I need to take a moment the next time I'm there and just like think. Wow, it's crazy. In any case, what was your trivia question for me?
Okay, gosh, I came up with so many. There's just so many interesting things surrounding this movie, so I had a hard time choosing one, but I'm going to go with this. In the early 2000s, there were reports in the trade papers, like in the film industry, that Disney was planning a contemporary, modern-day remake of Mary Poppins, starring which big-name actress?
When was this? Like
early 2000s.
In the 2000s, they were going to do a remake of Mary Poppins.
Yeah, a remake.
And you said this was with the Disney company or no?
Yes. Yeah.
Who? Meryl Streep.
No, I'll give you a hint. They did end up making the movie, but by the time it was released, it was a Touchstone project that had no affiliation with the Mary Poppins brand.
Oh my goodness, I am clueless, and I'm fascinated by this question.
I have some more hints, some interesting hints. So the actor who ended up playing the George Banks type character in this movie had previously played a character named George Banks in a different Touchstone movie.
Oh my gosh. I have no idea.
Okay, another hint. Julie Andrews is formally recognized as a dame, right? She's the original Mary Poppins.
Uh-huh.
But the actress we're looking for here has her own far less official royal title.
What? I hope somebody listening is like, oh, I know it, and freaking out right now. I am beyond clueless.
One more hint, and then I'll give you the answer.
Okay.
Okay. This movie is not a musical like the original Mary Poppins, but the actress in question is a recording artist and has starred in something like a half dozen major movie musicals.
A half dozen movie musicals. I'm a singer. Oh, Queen Latifah?
Queen Latifah. You figured it out. And the movie, do you know?
No.
Bringing Down the House.
Oh my gosh. I will never watch that movie now knowing its history. That is ridiculous.
I love that movie. It was critically panned. I think it's like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. I love it so much. But if you watch it, sure enough, you would never know, like by the time it was released, there was no mention, no advertisement of the connection to Mary Poppins. And you know how these things are in Hollywood. Like they start with an idea and then it, changes over the years. But if you watch it, you can totally see that fundamentally it is the Mary Poppins story.
Very interesting. Anyways, as I mentioned, this is the season 5 finale of Disney Coast to Coast, guys. And since it is, I did want to have a quick chat with you about not only you, but also I've had some phenomenal co-hosts come on the show this season. So I asked a question to a bunch of them, and I'm going to talk to Aaron about it right now. I want to know what your favorite thing to come from the Walt Disney Company was in 2018, and then also what you're looking most forward to in 2019. And I did tell everybody, aside from Galaxy's Edge, because I'm sure Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is number one on most people's lists for 2019. So let's start with 2018. What was the thing that you were most excited about from the Walt Disney Company?
Yeah, it's been a weird year because it's a year that we've learned about a lot of things that are coming in the next few years, but we didn't get as many like new releases or new premieres in the theme parks. But I think I will say my favorite new Disney thing from 2018 would be Black Panther.
Oh, okay, Black Panther.
Which is funny because I'm not a Marvel person at all. But I just thought it was such a satisfying movie. That score is gorgeous. I've listened to it almost every day since it was released.
Who wrote the score?
He has a very hard to pronounce name. He hasn't done a lot outside of television, so the name escapes me right now. But yeah, just really fantastic.
Cool. For me, this is kind of a weird thing, and I know that you'll appreciate this as well. But I feel like it was the year that respect was finally shown for Hocus Pocus. In so many ways. We had a Freeform TV special, which wasn't the greatest, but mad respect for them doing it. We had a sequel book come out, of course, the El Capitan screenings, the Freeform Halloween House event that was in Los Angeles. Like, it feels like the year, it took 25 years, but that the company finally recognized and respected it, and leads me to think there will be more to come.
Oh, absolutely. Record number of Hocus Pocus merchandise items this year. Record number of TV airings. Got its own 24-hour marathon. Really, really incredible. I think you're totally right. The movie, or the company, which had previously apparently put Hocus Pocus on kind of like a do not mention list in their PR department for years, now has totally come full circle and embraced it, which is great.
Yeah. And now for 2019, other than Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, what are you looking most forward to?
So I would actually say more than Galaxy's Edge, I am most looking forward to Frozen 2.
Wow.
Because I think of everything that's coming next year, which includes a lot of exciting stuff, a lot of exciting live action remakes, Frozen 2 is the one that will hopefully give us new, really great Disney songs to love for years to come.
That's a surprising answer, but I like it. All right, mine would be the live-action Dumbo. I'm excited for that. I'm cheating here. I'm giving multiples. Live-action Dumbo, D23 Expo. I'm always looking super forward to. And honestly, the thing I'm probably most curious about, because I have very high hopes for it, is Disney Plus, the Disney streaming service. I'm excited to see what that finally is. We've been hearing about it for so long, so I'm pretty excited about that. So, in any case, guys, as I mentioned this past season on Disney Coast to Coast, I've had a lot of wonderful co-hosts join me. So here's what some of them had to say about their favorite Disney content from 2018 and what they're looking forward to in 2019.
Hey, it's Jeremy from the Mad Chatters podcast. Congratulations, Jeff, on another successful season of Disney Coast to Coast. You know, my favorite thing to come out of the Disney company in 2018 was Toy Story Land at Hollywood Studios. Initially, I thought this land would be tacky and cheap, and yet its charm has grown on me, which is probably what people say about me the first time they meet me. Anyways, in the coming year, I am most excited about the space-themed restaurant that's coming to Epcot. Something about it just gives me all the retro Epcot feels, and, who doesn't love space? Hey, thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to be a part of this great show, and I look forward to more Disney Coast to Coast in 2019.
Hi, this is Rob from Rob Plays, and my favorite thing to come out of Disney in 2018, surprisingly, would have to be Solo. As a lifelong Star Wars fan, it was really cool getting to see the character of Han expanded upon, and personally, I really enjoyed seeing another actor step into the role and kind of add their own personal twist to it. As for 2019, I'm most looking forward to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Disney's Hollywood Studios. I think it's about time the two of them got their own attraction in the parks, and as a big fan of that animation style and the new Mickey shorts, I'm really happy to see it represented in the parks themselves through a ride.
Hi, this is Jonathan Harville, and my favorite thing to come from the Walt Disney Company in 2018 has to be Incredibles 2. I grew up absolutely adoring the original, and I always saw it as the only Pixar film, other than maybe Toy Story, to really deserve a sequel. And I'm so glad in 2018 we got one. Directed by Brad Bird, reuniting the cast, and of course, Giacchino's amazing score. Now, it's of course a superhero film, and we have a ton of those today, but it's really a film about family, and a family learning what it's like to be a family and loving each other despite differences and growing together. And I think that's a really timely message. Of course, it's just so much fun and funny and heartfelt, and I love that it feels like a 60s spy film. I really hope one day we get a legitimate brand new Incredibles attraction in the parks. In 2019, what I'm looking most forward to, of course, other than Galaxy's Edge, is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Now, I can't believe I'm saying that because I absolutely adored the Great Movie Ride. One of my all-time favorite attractions ever. And I'm still super upset and admittedly very bitter that we don't have the Great Movie Ride anymore and it's not coming back. But if anything has to replace the Great Movie Ride, I'm glad that it's our Mickey Mouse. Now, I wish that it was Mickey from the 80s and 90s that I grew up with, but I will say the new cartoons have grown on me quite a bit. I'm so excited that we're getting a Mickey attraction that's technologically innovative, and I'm really excited to see how Imagineering pulls it off.
Hey guys, my name is Brandon Hawkins from the happiestblog-on-earth.net, and my favorite thing to come out of the Walt Disney Company in 2018 was actually Mary Poppins Returns. It's not out in theaters quite yet. It comes out very, very, very soon, but I did get to see an early screening of it, and I absolutely loved it. There's so many fun little cameos and references to the original. The music is incredible, and it was just amazing to see Mary Poppins again back on the big screen. I'm looking forward in 2019, of course, to Galaxy's Edge opening at Disneyland Resort, but aside from that, I'm really looking forward to the Mickey Mouse celebrations coming to Disneyland Park and Magic Kingdom Park over at Walt Disney World.
This is Marco Bongiorno with the Pizza Planet truck. Next year, I'm looking forward to Toy Story 4 and Star Wars Episode 9. I'm excited to see how both of those hopefully wrap up. And when it comes to the parks, I'm looking forward to limited time food offerings and just seeing what type of merch comes out next year.
Hi, this is Preston from Disney Preston with 2 N's on Twitter. And my favorite thing that came out of the Walt Disney Company in 2018 was probably Avengers Infinity War, just because I'm such a huge fan of the MCU and I've been waiting for so long for that film. And the thing that I'm looking most forward to from the Walt Disney Company in 2019 is probably Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is going to Disney's Hollywood Studios towards the end of the year in 2019.
Hi, this is Kevin Perger from Defunctland. The favorite thing Disney did in 2018 for me was definitely that weird hour-long Mickey's birthday special where he played the drums and had women sing to him. And the thing I'm looking forward to most in 2019 from Disney is them figuring out what they're going to do with the Muppets. So I hope they find something to do with the Muppets, but that's definitely what I'll be looking forward to.
Hey there, Derek here from the Mad Chatters podcast. I loved so many things that came out of the Walt Disney Company in 2018, but I think my favorite of all was Black Panther. It was bold and daring and completely fresh and filled with great storytelling, and most importantly, it introduced us to the characters Okoye and Shuri, who are amazing. I watched it 3 times this year, and I know I'll watch it many more times in the future. Wakanda forever. Speaking of the future, of all the things I'm looking forward to in 2019, easily the thing I'm most excited about is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, the new attraction coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios. We know so few details about it, but the little we do know has me so excited to experience the ride for the first time. I mean, to finally have a ride themed to Mickey Mouse, I mean, come on, and to have it at a park that I love, but that could admittedly use a bit of help, has me so pumped for 2019. So here's to the new year.
Corey.
Jack.
From Theme Park Pulse. Jack, what was your favorite thing to come out of the Walt Disney Company in 2018?
You know, I really enjoyed a little movie called Christopher Robin.
Well, it wasn't a little movie.
You're right.
Well, it wasn't a huge movie either.
It was really quite fun with our favorite Obi-Wan Kenobi.
My favorite thing is the Incredicoaster. I mean, way to upgrade an attraction that I loved, but everybody else seemed to hate. So we win either way.
Smells like cookies. What are you excited for in 2019?
I'm actually really excited for Tron Light Cycle Power Run, the Tron coaster coming to the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World.
I am really excited for Mickey's Runaway Railway.
Oh, also at Walt, we will have to plan a trip.
I think it's time.
Notice we said Walt Disney World, Jeff DePaoli. That's because we over here at Theme Park Pulse, we love you and we're wishing you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
And a Happy New Year.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Gosh, you just find me on Twitter at Aaron Wallace. AaronWallaceOnline.com is my website, or on Instagram, AWOL, not AWOL. So that's AWALL, not AWOL. And yeah, Jeff, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your season finale. That's really cool. Just as like a fan of your show. And I have loved talking Mary Poppins with you.
Yeah, well, I knew I wanted to do a Mary Poppins episode in celebration of the sequel, and I knew you were the guy to do it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Jeff.
Now, folks, as I mentioned, this episode is the official Season 5 finale of Disney Coast to Coast, but don't worry, the Season 6 premiere of Disney Coast to Coast will be on Wednesday, January 30th, 2019, and until then, there will be a mini episode of Disney Coast to Coast every Wednesday leading up to it, so make sure you tune in for that. But guys, during this hiatus, take that time and catch up on episodes of Disney Coast to Coast that you've missed. There are hundreds of episodes of the show now, so if you missed some, go back, check them out. If you listen to them all, you're amazing. Go back and listen to your favorite ones. Thank you so much for making Disney Coast to Coast a part of your life in 2018. It is officially the end of the year, so make sure you head to DisneyCoastToCoast.com and place your order for a DCTC 2019 calendar featuring original photos from around the Disney parks. Everybody have a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday, a Happy New Year, Merry Everything, and of course, a magical day. Bye!
Find
Thanks for watching Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePaoli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.